All right. Good morning, Doug. We're back. There's this big controversy about the use of the Signal app and JD Vance and basically the entire crew planning Hegseth, et cetera, planning making war plans and sharing those war plans. And apparently, a journalist was invited into it. And I use Signal. I know you don't use it, but what's your take on this whole controversy?
Well, how big a deal is it? Uh, you've got the top security people in the US, top military people, and an outsider gets invited in. And from my understanding, somebody can identify themselves on Signal just with their initials or whatever. So
Yep.
here you are talking with people you think you know. You don't want to seem like a fool by not knowing who these initials or whatever it is for this person are. So it's easy. But then again, these are supposed to be uh, the top security people in the country. So that shouldn't happen. But on the other hand, well, you know what they say about the word assume. But I'm not so concerned about the fact that that breach happened because the administration is new. People are just getting grooved in, so mistakes are made. All right, this is forgivable as far as I'm concerned and can be rectified easily. The problem is what's come out about the cavalier way they were discussing an actual act of war against a country on the other side of the world. And I understand what's been reported. And of course, you can't really believe what's been reported all the time. That they hit 40 targets in Yemen just last night. And I don't think most people are aware of the fact that the Saudis conducted a war against the Houthis, which incidentally are not the Yemeni government. They're a separatist group. They're a rebel group within Yemen. So the country of Yemen itself is actually in a state of chaos, and it's a pretty big country. Am I correct that they have 100 million people living in Yemen?
I can look it up. I can look it up while you're talking.
Because I've seen it alleged that within the next generation, Yemen is going to be at its present rate of growth, one of the most populous countries in the world.
I'm seeing the stat says 41.4 million people is what I'm seeing.
Ah, okay. Well, that's quite a few people for an obscure country at the southern end of Saudi Arabia. But in any event, the Saudis were conducting a full-scale war against the Houthis for 7 years, and now it seems that the U.S. has taken it over. And the question is, why? Because the U.S. doesn't have a merchant marine. We don't have American-flagged ships that are going through the Suez Canal because we don't have American-flagged ships going anywhere. The U.S. merchant marine doesn't exist anymore. So why is the U.S. Navy caring and killing people and putting itself in great danger because of what the Houthis are doing over there?
Especially,
What's the argument?
well, I think the only thing I've heard is that they threatened to start attacking Israeli flagged ships again. It was all on pause under the ceasefire deal with Gaza, but as that was violated or as the plans changed, the Houthis threatened to start attacking Israeli flagged ships. And then so under that threat, then that's when Trump decided it was a good idea to go after them hard.
Okay, Israeli flagged ships or ships that were trading with Israel,
Yeah.
bringing goods to Israel. Okay, so would Trump care if, for some reason, the Houthis decided they didn't like the Jordanians and they were going to do this as long as just let's transplant Israel for Jordan? Okay, would we care? Uh, I don't think so. Why are the Israelis special, incidentally?
Well, I think you asked the same argument. Would we be revoking? visas of protesters on college campuses if they were protesting, I don't know, pick your country, Jordan, you know? I don't think so.
No, no, probably not. Uh, yeah, you really can't talk about anything that has to do with race or religion or ethnicity today. It's kind of a no-go zone to talk about. And if you can't talk about it, you can't think about it. And this is not good. You're creating a thought crime.
Yeah.
You even ask these questions.
Yes, I think so. Definitely are now, especially these particular questions that we just asked. Yeah,
You know. Of course, my argument has been, look, this is the Hatfields and McCoys having it out with each other. I feel bad for both parties, but it's none of our business, and we can't make it better. So the Israelis have to solve this with their neighbors, or not neighbors, but not our problem. So,
exactly. Exactly.
and
But so what stood out to you about that? I think you saw some of the text message exchange between Hegseth and JD Vance and Mike Walls. So I think you saw some of the signal chats. What was your any particular impression from what you saw?
yeah, there was no conversation that I recall where anybody's asking, wait a minute, what's right or what's wrong? They just assume that we ought to be doing this. That
Well,
was
once,
basically the depth of the conversation, wasn't it?
yeah, and the goal was to send a message.
Send a message. And the question comes up, well, exactly what message might that be? You know, we're a country on the other side of the world with a big, powerful military. You have to do what we tell you, regardless of anything else. I mean, these people are talking in what do you call it? Sound bites, actually, sending a
Right.
message.
Yeah,
I'd
even
like
with
to
each
get a
other.
definition of that.
Yeah, even with each other. I can understand where you go out in public and you explain it in these sound bites, but with each other, it shows the depth of thought really about this. It's they're not there's not there's not measurable objectives they're trying to hit. I mean, except certain weapons packages. There are numbers of packages and numbers of planes that were being used, but it wasn't a real goal with it.
Well, and it's the means that this was being conducted by on Signal. So this is really like written communication where you have to type. Well, that's not very effective because if you can't type quickly and aren't in a position to edit what you say exactly after you type it, they should at least use Zoom or a Zoom equivalent so you can look at the person when he says something and explain yourself better than you can by typing things. When I was in high school, I never took typing class, and my typing skills are still not what they perhaps should be. They're adequate, but no more. So the whole process seems screwed up. Forget about the content of the process.
Yeah, I was surprised that, well, first of all, do they really want a written record of all of this stuff? So you'd almost think that they'd be more careful that we don't want, why write it out? Like we should talk instead, if they're being careful. I mean, forget about the fact that communication is improved if you actually are speaking face to face on stuff. I was surprised that they'd want that written out. And I'm wondering if they'd change that now and just hop on a call and discuss it instead going forward, just to reduce this stuff. But I don't know. I mean, I just imagine them one guy's standing in line at Starbucks, texting on his phone, responding to a mess. It just imagine the way it's conducted is strange.
Yeah. If it's serious enough to actually kill a whole bunch of people in a foreign country, which is the case, because wasn't there a comment made that, uh, yeah, we took out this apartment building because we knew somebody was there. Well, wait a minute. Was there anybody else in that apartment building than some alleged bad guy? I
Right. They
mean,
delayed striking a particular apartment building until the person they were targeting got in there to see his girlfriend. And
yes, that's what it was. So, it just seems to me improper to idly kill people in foreign countries.
In the
actually kind of,
responses, the guys responding with emojis, the replies were like, we got him. It's like somebody flexing and like a fist pump. It's
yeah.
childish.
And these people that Trump has around him, they impress me as, far superior to the people that Biden had around him, who were actual clowns, dangerous clowns. But uh, if you're going to do something like start a war or potentially start a war, you really should at least get together in a boardroom and talk out the implications of this. Like starting with what's right or what's wrong. Is it really part of our business? Why are we just doing this because Israel's involved? I mean, there's all kinds of issues. So these people are like on autopilot.
Yeah, I agree. And a member of our file actually has a Substack. His name's JD Breen, and he did an article about this yesterday, which was interesting. He's like, of course, the press is attacking big time, calling for, investigations from the DOJ and the FBI, and that, that this classified information got out. But and they're obsessed with the process, that they were using this app and that, security was breached in some way, but they're not asking any of the deeper questions at all.
Yeah.
It,
And the fact is, from a strictly military tactical point of view, this is they could be whacking a tar baby because these American ships floating around there. Okay, the Houthis, let's say, have a bunch of missiles and a destroyer or a cruiser or a carrier can shoot down most of these missiles. But the way these missiles are basically shot down is with tube launched, vertical launched missiles of our own. And there's a limited number of them on each of these ships, depending on the size of the ship, 90, 100, 150. So once those are exhausted, the ship is essentially just defenseless. So from a military point of view, the Houthis should be able to figure this out if they actually want to sink some American ships, is launch enough missiles that the Americans launch all their countermeasures. Now they're essentially defenseless. And you're going to have American ships that are going to turn into future wrecks to dive on in the Red Sea or wherever they might be.
yeah, and also it does seem like this is all being set up as a predicate to attack Iran.
Yeah.
Because just saying it's Iran, anything that they do, Iran's responsible. And that's what worries me the most about it. It seems like there's been so much chaos in the Middle East in the last couple of years since October 7th. And you just see this is like a golden opportunity for some, to finally go after Iran.
Yeah. Okay. So the Iranian government is in control of some, I presume they're religious fanatics, but I don't actually know because, as I've discussed in the past, I blew my chance to go to Iran on a polo junket that would have put me next to all the top people in the country in the three major cities for a couple of weeks. Well, so I don't really know who these people are, but uh, these people in Washington don't know who they are either. I mean, they don't talk to them. Uh, they don't personally visit the country to get some kind of a boots on the ground impression, although it would be very insulated since they'd be high government officials just seeing what they're shown. But we don't know anything about the damn country. We don't, and they don't either. I'm talking about our government officials.
What do you think the odds are that we do attack Iran before, this year? What do you think the odds are?
It seems high because, looked at from a very long-term point of view, I think Israel's screwed. There's no way out for Israel. It's surrounded by a billion or so uh, Muslims that have been thoroughly indoctrinated from the Koran. I mean, the word of God himself, Allah himself, I should say. Depends on which God you want to choose. Allah is a different God than others. Uh, yeah, so they're just, the Jews are evil. I mean, that's what Allah says. So I don't see how Israel can survive, quite frankly. And incidentally, this war that the Israelis are conducting in Gaza, um, it was one thing in the past for Israel to fight 3-day or 7-day wars. Over quick, go back to business. But this is a chronic thing now that's disrupting their society, disrupting their economy. All these soldiers are away from their jobs, away from their families. It's a dangerous situation. I don't think this can possibly end well if the various Islamic forces keep up the pressure, directly or indirectly.
Well, and the chief, at least they say, the chief pressure really comes from Iran. So that's like the problem that must be dealt with in their mind.
That's what they say. So, but all right, they have a problem. They should solve it. It's not our problem. Why don't
Yeah.
they? Why don't the Israelis, for instance, become really friendly with the Canadian government and get the Canadian government to solve their problem for them?
Well, I think the door is open right now because the Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, unelected Prime Minister, said the other day the relationship Canada had with the U.S. is over. What does that mean, even?
That is disturbing because in the past, Canadians and Americans were indistinguishable in just about every way, except Canadians are reputed to say A after a lot of
They do.
affirmative. Yeah, they
It's
do,
true.
actually. So the fact that the guy leading the country would say that, I mean, this is inflammatory. It's like inciting to hatred.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like, what are they going to do? They're going to become, part of an axis with the EU against the EU? I mean, like I can't even understand. And I do understand that with all the trolling that Trump does and all the threats and all the real economic pain caused by tariffs, like I understand how that doesn't feel like something a neighbor, a friendly neighbor would do. I get you, but you we knew they got to know that Trump turns on a dime anyway. He acts like he hates somebody and then he loves them the next day. But if you escalate like this, I don't know. I mean, it's very undiplomatic, and it's going to make it difficult to kind of mend fences.
That's right. It's really asking for trouble, especially with a volatile person like Trump, who seems to take things personally. And for all of the favorable things that Trump is doing, mainly Doge, as far as I'm concerned, that's the big thing that
Yeah.
he's to be lauded about. But when it comes to foreign countries, I mean, he's acting like the king of the world, and he shouldn't do that for lots of reasons.
Right. Speaking of Doge, there were a couple of interesting things that came out recently. Let me just share real quick a clip. I haven't seen this.
You've got overstaffing. A good example of overstaffing would be the IRS has got 1,400 people who are dedicated to provisioning laptops and cell phones. So if you join the IRS, you get a laptop and a cell phone, you're provisioned. So if each of those IRS officers or employees provisioned 2 employees per day, you could provision the entire IRS in a little more than a month. So 12 times a year,
it doesn't make any sense. Why would you have 1,400 people whose only job it is to give out a laptop and a phone?
Right. The whole IRS could be handled once a month. So that doesn't make any sense. You've got overstaffing.
Doesn't really make any sense, but I guess they add that to all the other things that don't make much sense in the government.
I know. I listened to the interview that these guys, Elon and a couple of his cohorts, had with Brett Baer, and Elon said that the government was spending $1 billion or had spent $1 billion. He was corrected. One of his subalterns said it was actually $840 million to do a 10-question survey as to what a group, I don't know the size of the group, thought about the national parks. How do you spend $840 million to do a survey that, as Elon pointed out, could be done by SurveyMonkey for about $10,000? In other words, this is hundreds of millions of dollars that went directly into somebody's pocket. And they're not going to use the survey for anything. It's pure graft. It's a swindle. This is fraud. People should be criminally prosecuted for this. It's not just waste. It's criminal fraud as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, this would be basically there are 330 million recreational visits across all national park units in 2024. So they paid $3 essentially for each visit to a national park for their survey.
To get information that there was no particular use for.
Right.
You know, somebody's wallet was fattened. A bunch of people's wallets were fattened immensely by this.
Yeah, I mean, how can you undo this stuff? It's such, you know, this one was worth almost $1 billion. You know, there's some that are worth probably 50 million. You know, some that are worth like the Stacey Abrams thing where she got 2 billion. You know,
Yeah.
it's so rotten. You really can't sort it out.
Yeah, Doge is the best thing that's happened to the US government just about forever. And as Elon has pointed out, yeah, sure, they're going to make mistakes. Nobody bats 1,000. But I mean, this is a cancer. This is actual rot. It's actual, I mean, it's eating away at the fabric of the country itself when all this money is being swindled out of the taxpayers and then paid to criminals that accept it, not just accept it, but grovel for it. Now, this is a big deal. This is why people like the Trump administration.
Yeah, I say this is the best thing for PR they do is Doge stuff. I mean, because everyone might be like, they hear about the other things that are going on. They're like, what the hell? Even the tariffs, like, you know, some people could say it's popular, but, you know, they this 25% tariff on cars, you know, people are not going to like it that their cars are going to go up so much in price. I mean, cars are already too expensive in America. But this is a crowd pleasing activity. I just wonder, you know, I'm never really sure how much of this you hear about these problems and you hear about things get stopped, but you never really know, like, do we get money back or like, did it really end? And did the judge, you know, did some judge overrule it? And so, like, has anything really happened? Like, it's hard to know.
There should be no question that the US can outcompete any other country in the world. Yes, wages are higher in the US, but the infrastructure in the US, having been built over a long time, is much better. The culture in the country is much more productive than other places. If you're worried about being outcompeted by foreign countries, it's simply a question of freeing the economy up, getting rid of regulations on all levels, and reducing taxes, which distort things and increase costs tremendously, both directly and indirectly. Having to hire lawyers and accountants. I mean, look, in the mining business, it's much more important today to have a good legal team than a good geologic team, sad to say.
I think that's true in almost any business in America today, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the answer to the question, not trying to punish other countries because they're doing something stupid, like putting themselves under embargo by having tariffs, which is what it is. I mean, a country that has high tariffs is in effect putting itself under embargo. They're doing it, not foreigners. That's the way it should be viewed. Anyway, it's stupidity, and there's actually no cure for stupidity. There have been a number of essays done that I've accumulated over the years on stupidity, and Einstein was quite correct. After hydrogen, it's the most common thing in the universe.
It certainly isn't. I have a hard time. So the big tariff plan is supposedly released on April 2nd, and it seems like there's going to be universal tariffs. I mean, on virtually everything, all kinds of different percentages to sort of equalize what they see is to make things level the playing field, I guess, across the world. And it's just hard to not see it escalating out of control. I mean, we already see with Canada, their response to us, and then you have like Doug Ford, you know, the Ontario, whatever, premier, I guess they call him, who's like saying, we're going to cause pain to America. They get cut off a huge amount of electricity that flows. and to the northeast that they're dependent on. I mean, it could get wild.
Yeah, I mean, in game theory and just in the real life, it's like if somebody slaps you, you have to respond. Or it, if you're in the political arena, you have to. And then you slap and slap back and things escalate. So this is, oh well, we'll have to see how this works out.
Yeah. Well, there are some good things. Go ahead.
I mean, listen, we're just amoeba floating in the ocean. The powers that be are actually pulling all the levers here. All we can attempt to do is insulate ourselves from their stupidity as much as we can.
Yeah, and just trying to figure out what's really going on and the direction we're going in. It's become more confusing now than at any point in my life, just to find out what's actually occurring in the world and the direction we're headed. So it's like you see, and we've tried to make sense of like Trump's plan for remaking the economy and all of that, but it's still, it's a lot of guesswork that's left us to try and figure it out so that we can insulate ourselves effectively, or at least reduce the downside risk that we face. But it's getting harder every day.
Yeah, and so much of what you pick up on the internet is clickbait that is intended to get you on the site. And do you really want to go down all these rabbit holes? Many of them have a deadly viper hiding at the bottom of it, trying to bite you. So it's very hard to get reliable information these days. And any information you do get, it's your responsibility to think very critically about the nature of it.
Right. Is it true? I mean, so yeah, it is really hard to figure out what's going on. And um, yeah, when we spent before we started recording, we were going through a bunch of headlines and trying to fact check them essentially. Like, is this right? Is this right? And like half of them were, and about half of them were not, as far as we can tell.
Yeah.
So
And we don't really know unless we get on a plane and spend a day or two investigating, asking lots of questions and actually looking at stuff. And there really aren't a lot of actual investigative journalists these days. The journalists that report things that they represent as truth, basically crap they pick up off the internet, where other journalists have picked it up off the internet themselves. So it's like a make-believe world that we're living in.
right. Yeah, I know. It's like so much of what we have to rely on are official statements from our official leaders, but those are misleading too. And then sometimes, but like the comment from Mark Carney, like that seems like that's important that he said it that way publicly, that the relationship is over. And, but then you look at a lot of Trump's comments and you're like, well, we're supposed to take him seriously, but not literally, right? Because you can't rely on what he says. But in the EU, the various leaders have been talking a lot about, for instance, this October, they're rolling out the digital euro. So the central bank digital currency apparently is going to be live in October of this year. And then in the same week, they talk about essentially unlocking the savings of Europeans. And those comments are, I mean, we don't know what exactly they're going to do yet, but those are terrifying comments to me. I don't know. What do you think about it?
I think that if I was a European that had my money in Europe, especially in euros in Europe, I would be very afraid. And I would try to get my money out of that currency and out of that continent. And actually, Europe impresses a nice place to visit, lots of history, lots of pretty buildings, blah, blah. Yes, of course, I lived in Europe. But this is not the time to be in Europe for all kinds of different reasons. I
Yeah.
mean, look, we had that conference here in Uruguay last week. And if I was a European, what's the best place in the world to go? If you want to stay within Western culture, I would say the Southern Cone, which is to say Uruguay or Argentina, or perhaps even Paraguay, or maybe the government can change their southern Brazil. much, much better than Europe from many points of view. But why are these Europeans, intelligent, well-educated people, why are they hanging around there still?
I know, I'm really surprised. I see lots, and as a percentage, the number of Americans, Europeans, Canadians here in Uruguay is still very small. It's like made up a tiny fraction of like the real estate transactions here last year is one of the stats we figured out. And I and I and I know things are bad in the US and they're certainly bad in Canada, but you just look at the situation in Europe and I can't believe there aren't way more Europeans like hitting the eject button. I mean, it just shocks me actually. Like they're being overrun with these refugees or migrants, whatever you want to call them. The governments are out of control. The economy is getting crushed. I mean, I don't like what more do you want? What more does it take for you to decide it's time to pack up and do a plan B? I don't get it.
I agree. If you're a young European who doesn't have a lot of capital but has his whole life in front of him, you got to get the hell out of Europe to go someplace where there's opportunity and freedom. And if you're an older person who's accumulated a lot of capital, get the hell out of there because it's dangerous and your capital is going to be dissipated for you, whether you like it or not. I think the only argument for staying in Europe might be of people that are at a certain stage of life, middle class, middle aged. Well, okay, it's hard for them to move, but the young people and the old people, they really should bail.
Yeah, and this whole about unlocking savings. I remember during like Christy Freeland, the finance minister, minister of finance in Canada, talked about the same idea during the COVID era about unlocking the savings of Canadians. The same idea, basically, that they're now talking about in Europe. And when I heard her say it, I was like, "What the hell does that mean?" But it turns out there's a lot of capital in people's savings in the EU. It's got like $23 trillion in savings and bank accounts in the EU. And knowing, when I'm sure from Ursula's perspective, when she says we need to raise $1 trillion for military spending, and she looks at all the bank deposits and goes, oh, I got 23 sitting around. What's a trillion? We could take that, no problem.
And maybe she can raise it voluntarily simply by having the EU issue a bond at a high enough interest rate to attract people voluntarily. And in the fine print of the bond or whatever kind of investment vehicle it might be, it indicates they're going to be using it for these stupid things, which will never be able to pay back the investment. There's all kinds of ways you can defraud people if you're a government.
Yeah, and one of the things I was just looking at the idea of, them seeing just like with just the way everyone looked at Russia's money and said, oh, there's this amount of capital that's 500 billion just sitting there. That sure would be nice to have and a good way to punish people we don't like. And so they seize that. You got to imagine they're looking at all the bank deposits around the world in the same way as these states get more and more desperate. So I was just looking at, has this been done before? They call it capital levies, actually. And, it goes way back, to ancient Athens. There's examples of it, but there's an example in 1992. The Italian government imposed a 0.6% levy on all bank deposits in 1992. And
just from out of the blue. Now,
yeah,
see, I'd never heard about that.
it's pretty shocking. And then, of course, most people know about Cyprus, with the bank bail-in, they called it, but, 47.5% of banks' deposits in Cyprus were just dissipated.
Over $100,000
100,000 euros.
limit.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. But there are all these things that you pick up. Like Trump wants to abolish the Department of Education. Bravo. It serves absolutely no useful purpose having their scores of thousands of employees doing nothing but making life miserable for all kinds of people. But I just read this the other day that the woman who's running the Department of Education, who's a Trump appointee at this point, it's not that she wants to cut spending from the Department of Education. She's reallocating like $18 billion was the number I saw of spending to other parts of the government so that the recipients of this money, which is basically being pissed away to administrators, of course, they'll still get the money. They'll just get it from a different department, not the Department of Education. So I'm sure Trump, well, I'm not sure Trump did this because he's not a libertarian. I mean, he's kind of a pissed off megalomaniac who's doing the best he can, but I'm not sure it's the best. In fact, I'm sure it's not the best that could be done.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just continuing to read this this Wikipedia page on capital levies, and apparently in February of 2014 was the first time the European Commission floated the idea of a way to mobilize more personal pension savings for long-term financing. And more recently in the UK in 2020, they were talking about the same thing. So it's going to happen.
Yeah, these people that are running Europe today are exactly the same personality set of traits that ran Germany in the 1930s or ran Russia, Soviet Union in the 1920s. They're the same type of people that want to do the same type of things. So it's, and especially now with all the governments in Europe as bankrupt as that of the US is, they want to preserve things the way they are, where they're running it. So they want to keep themselves in office, keep the government going. Yeah, look, they're treating the average citizen the way a wolf treats a lamb with pork chops hung around its neck.
No doubt about that. You want me to mention that there's an effort to privatize the TSA that's going on. I mean, there's some positive news. Like there is an effort to shrink and get rid of the government in our lives, and apparently there's a proposal to privatize the TSA.
I remember when the TSA was created, and there was a discussion about whether it should be left up to the airlines and be a private enterprise, as it were, or be made into a bureaucracy. And now I think there's roughly 75,000 employees of the TSA. It's a major bureaucracy. Can you abolish it? I don't think so. It can't be abolished because the average American is so afraid that something bad will happen if they don't have one of these drooling lowlives going through their bags and inspecting them and roping them. So I'm afraid the average American is too full of fear and basically too degraded to want to get rid of it. Can it be privatized? It's not needed to start with. It's up to the individual airline, the kind of security. And fly the airline that you like their security best. That's the answer to the question, but no, I don't think they'll do it.
Fortunately not. And there's a kind of an unrelated topic, maybe going back to the Middle East one a little bit, is that there's a lot of controversy around this thing called the Epic City that's being built in East Plano, Texas. And apparently it's a 400-acre Islamic property development, really.
Yeah, and you've looked at the website for it, and
I could share that video if you want me to with people.
I think yes, just so people have a grip, because it has a lot of implications, philosophical and otherwise, that are interesting. So I think we did, yeah, just a little bit. So when people hear about it,
Here's the pitch.
Yeah, great.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, you asked and we delivered. You know, when we launched our Epic City project, subhanAllah, we were overwhelmed by the response, not just from our local Dallas community, but around the globe. Our website crashed and we sold over 530 lots. We know when we announce phase 2, we're going to sell that out quickly as well. But subhanAllah, the demand was so much. We got so much feedback. People were asking if they could purchase larger plots for more exclusive houses. Well, guess what? but we're now excited to announce Epic Ranches. Epic Ranches is going to be a land that is literally 1 to 2 minutes away from Epic City. It's going to be exclusive plots, just a minimal quantity. We have around 60 plots beginning at 1 acre and more. And we also have...
There's quite a salesman, I think, Doug.
Yeah.
You see, this is the whole... Let's get the city plan a little bit so people can see that.
Good looking, actually.
Yeah. 530 lots they pre-sold. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. So, and how are locals reacting to this Sharia law community being built?
They're freaking out about it. Apparently, they're being investigated by a number of different state agencies in Texas. You know, they're saying that they're violating consumer protection laws. My guess is because they don't want non-Muslims to live there. I'm just trying to get to the prices here so people can see. This is generally pretty cheap land, and they're selling the hell out of it. This is for after they sold out of the main thing, Epic City, then they added these 2 ranches that are conveniently located to Epic City. This is, I guess, in East Plano, Texas. It's east of Plano in Texas. Which
so it seems to say here on their website, the lots go from, am I reading this correctly? 167,000 to 200 and, or is it more?
Yeah, the big lots are 550,000. The 1 acre ones. Sorry, there you go. It's clear now. Yeah, the big ones go up to 550,000 for a 1 acre lot, and they have townhome lots that are as low as, it says, 40K. Oh no, sorry, it's 400K. Yeah, they went over the line.
Well, these are not cheap lots for out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, frankly. So it brings up a number of questions. One thing, it's kind of disturbing that if you said that there are a dozen government agencies investigating these people, okay, but they're not apparently using government money. But it does bring up questions. Wait a minute, this is the middle of nowhere, Texas. What are all of these Muslims? But he looked like a Native American or sounded like a Native American. I mean, look, the problem is with the Mohammedan religion, frankly. That's probably the base of it. It's an expansionist religion that doesn't like outsiders and wants to convert them. And we've covered parts of the Quran which are overtly hateful. And of course, I don't have a problem with hate as such, but what it is it's a change in American culture. These are not like true blue American values of the people that are living there. But then again, maybe the Amish aren't either, quite frankly. And when the Catholics came to the US centuries ago, people were justifiably, it seemed, outraged against minions of the Pope, of all people, living among them. And it's the same with the Jews, and it's the same with everybody. So what are you going to do about it? As long as they don't overtly aggress against you, I guess is really, you may not like it because you don't like their culture and so forth, but what do you do?
Yeah.
If any?
Well, I think the conclusion is Texas isn't what it used to be, and neither is America, frankly. I mean,
no, when before the show started, we were talking about this series, 1882, a prequel to Yellowstone. And I can imagine how outraged the Apaches and the Navajos and the Comanches were to have all these white people invading them. What are you going to do about it? This is the way life works. The more powerful group evicts the less powerful group. Doesn't matter if they were there first.
right. It's the way, yeah. It's definitely the way things evolve over time. You know, they have a stronger culture, better sense of identity, better organized, higher birth rate.
better unit cohesion, you know. Yeah, listen, what you got to do is think of, well, what is this land area currently called the United States going to look like 100 years from now? I'll make a bet that it's not going to be even called the United States anymore. It's going to be radically different, assuming that we don't have a biological or nuclear war in the meantime, which is not a good bet, but we won't.
And it's even worse for Europe, wouldn't you say?
Much worse. So if you're a European, you go someplace, you know, when the going gets tough, the tough get going.
That's right.
They don't just sit there like a potted plant and hope for the best.
Yeah, complain about the new neighbors.
Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't really get you very far.
that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and I get it. Like, I like as a entrepreneur, I see what this guy is doing, and I go, very smart. You know, it's an affinity community. There's clearly high demand for it. He's not going for the low end of the market. You know, he's not going for the Somali refugees. He's going for, you know, people who've got the money and can afford it. Perhaps some new people that just paid for a golden visa through Trump's new program.
Listen, I started an affinity community in Argentina with foreigners, okay? So it's just a question of degree, isn't it?
It is. It really is. Yeah, and it is a little irritating. The states, like, you know, just giving them going after them. And I know it's probably very popular politically in Texas for them to, you know, see this and be like, we don't want this in Texas, and to like go after them. But it seems like they're getting the shakedown from every agency the state has to try and keep them from doing it. So,
Yeah. But whatever the thing is, it's different from actively importing at great expense to somebody 200,000 Somalis, mainly to Minneapolis. And I'm still wondering exactly how that happened, exactly where the money came from, and exactly how they selected the people that they selected to fly over. And, you know, and how are the Somalis doing in Minneapolis? I don't actually know because I don't see a lot of reporting on it. It would be politically incorrect to report on something like that. And if it was reported on, I think it would be unreliable.
yeah, I think you're right. And I think, well, if nothing else, they become a very powerful political bloc there. I mean,
Ilhan Omar, I guess,
yeah,
is yeah.
her, but then also just, you know, the local officials too. And, you know, they redid the Minnesota flag not long ago. So looks more like the Somali flag. I mean, it was supposedly, you know,
Yes. Yeah, I know, one thing after another,
yeah.
you know, so yeah.
One last question I just wanted to ask you. Uh, what is it, copper prices now? Is this the all-time high, $5.12? That,
I think so, actually. So where's copper going?
yeah, and what does it mean? Isn't that supposed to be good for it means it's a good sign for the economy when copper goes up, but it feels like it's so tenuous, the economy now. Or is it just,
Yeah, it's a really good question. Part of it, of course, is due to the electrification of the US and the world, building all these data centers, which requires a lot more electricity, which requires a lot more transmission and a lot more plants. And of course, electric cars use 2 or 3 times as much copper as regular cars and so forth. So that's part of it. But on the other hand, there's an old saying is that every bull market has a copper roof, and that it's Dr. Copper. Copper goes high. It means the economy is booming. Time to get out of the water. So I'm still of the opinion that the economy is on the edge of a massive collapse, which is going to happen during Trump's reign, which is going to have all kinds of implications for the good things as well as the bad things he's doing. But it's look, there's so many distortions in the economy that have been cranked in by the massive creation of new dollars and government regulations and so forth that it's hard to tell what's real and what should be real, as opposed to what is. I don't know. Do you have an opinion on copper and data centers? Among
Well,
other
I think they're going to be using a lot. I mean, just what you said that the demand for that. And, I read about the people that are bullish on copper, their projections on future demand for it. But at the same time, it seems like we're in such a dangerous place economically and with the markets. I mean, if nothing else, even if everything Trump is doing is fixing stuff, meaning it's taking out all of these artificial forces in the economy, from government regulations to money, like even if you're correcting that, it's going to cause a lot of pain, along the way. It's going to be so disruptive to everything. It's hard to imagine being really bullish on the economy. I mean, from my point of view, at least.
Yeah, the economy as it exists, it's going to be
Right.
reorienting, which means a lot of businesses and individuals are going to go bankrupt and some new fortunes are going to be made. The only answer to this is people say, well, let's do something. Let's get out and vote. That is a total non-solution, worse than a non-solution. It's the wrong solution. What you've got to do is put yourself in a position where you're not adversely affected from it and hopefully can profit from the distortions which are being unraveled on the one hand and new ones on the other. So that's the best answer. The answer is not political at this point.
Yeah, look at the markets, just like most things are down. What's up today is gold and copper, I guess
Oh,
is
is gold up? I haven't even checked. Is gold up again today?
spot price is at 3,084.
Oof, that is a new high, I believe.
Yeah, the futures are at 31.18.
Wow. Well, one of these days, these crappy little gold stocks are going to catch fire.
Well, and a lot of these crappy little gold stocks have been doing okay this year, to be honest. I mean, I think in the last, what is it? I mean, GDXJ. So it's, the junior miners is up 15% in the last month.
Not bad. In a real gold bull market, we're talking 15% in a day or 15% in an hour.
Just getting warmed up. It's doing stretches, trying to
Yeah.
get ready for the sprint.
Because the average guy doesn't know that these crappy little stocks exist. And the average fund manager, even if he knows they exist, really doesn't want to touch them with a 10-foot pole for many different reasons that we've discussed in the past. So, yeah, I'm really overweight in this stuff.
Yeah. It'll be good. There'll be some upside to the downside.
Yeah. And of course, around here, we always like to look at the bright side.
That's right. That's right. On that note, we'll leave it here, Doug. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next week.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks. Bye-bye.